Hello everyone, this is Showtime 112. North Vietnamese Air Force, known officially as Vietnamese People's Air Force, was created in mid-1950s. The country's leadership started by upgrading the existing airfields left by France and Japan, and asking their communist allies for assistance. The first batch of 80 pilot candidates were sent to China in February 1956. Other groups were sent to Czechoslovakia and Soviet Union. Most of them had very little educational background, which made the training even more challenging than for candidates from more developed nations. By 1959, 13 air bases were made suitable for jet fighter operations. Soviet Union donated 32 MiG-17s, making this the first jet fighter of the VPAF. Additional deliveries were made by China with its locally produced variant of the MiG-17, designated J-5. This enabled the establishment of the first jet fighter unit in May 1963, the 921st Fighter Regiment known as Sao Do, meaning Red Star, based at Noi Bai Airfield. When the United States launched their first airstrikes against North Vietnam following the Gulf of Tonkin incident in August 1964, the VPAF was not yet ready to oppose them. There was still plenty of training to do, and besides being numerically inferior, their fighter, MiG-17, was hardly state-of-the-art technology. It was essentially an upgraded version of Korean War-era MiG-15. But the North Vietnamese believed they could apply guerrilla tactics in the air, just like they did on the ground. They would avoid combat with enemy fighters, focus on bombers, attack quickly, and disengage even more quickly. The North Vietnamese leadership decided they would challenge American formations only when they crossed the 20th parallel at Tan Hoa. The Silver Swallows, as the MiG-17s were called by their pilots, first went to action on 3rd of April 1965. Visual observation posts spotted American formations heading towards the bridge at Ham Rong at 9:47. 6 MiG-17s were scrambled to meet the attacking force. One flight of 2 aircraft was a diversionary flight flying at 20,000 feet, trying to draw enemy attention and support the main flight if needed. The main intercept flight consisted of 4 MiG-17s, and it was led by Pham Ngoc Lan. They took off about a minute after the diversionary flight. The weather was cloudy with limited visibility. North Vietnamese AAA was ready to engage the Americans. They shot down one US Navy A-4C. The pilot, Lieutenant Commander Raymond Vauden of VA-216, was captured. At 9 minutes past 10, the main Vietnamese flight reported sighting enemy aircraft, a flight of F-8 Crusaders tasked with flag suppression. They were given the order to attack. Pham Ngoc Lan and his wingman followed one pair of Crusaders who were apparently unaware of them, focusing on their attacks against AAA. The Vietnamese leader opened fire and witnessed his target explode. At 10:15, his wingman, Pham Van Tuc, reported seeing another aircraft to his right. Pham Ngoc Lan ordered him to attack while he took the role of wingman. Pham Van Tuc opened fire and claimed hitting the American fighter, which reportedly crashed, just like the first one. But the MiG-17 pilots didn't return to base without any drama. Pham Ngoc Lan ran out of fuel, and instead of ejecting, he decided to belly land on a riverbank to try to save a precious MiG-17. He was successful, but he was soon surrounded by local villagers pointing their guns at him. He was born and raised in the South, and his South Vietnamese accent complicated matters. But things were eventually cleared, and a helicopter soon arrived to pick him up. The MiG was repaired and put back to service. These two claims that the North Vietnamese pilots made were confirmed by their superiors, and they are considered to be the first victories by North Vietnamese jet fighters. In fact, 3rd of April is still celebrated as VPAF Day. Gun camera evidence seemed to clearly support the claims. But can the claims be matched with American records? Let's examine the combat from the American perspective. The American attacks on the bridges near Tan Hoa included a strike group from USS Hancock, consisting of 6 A-4 Skyhawks, with 4 F-8 Crusaders from VF-211 to provide flag suppression. The Crusaders carried Zuni rockets mounted on each side of the fuselage. There was also a flight of 4 F-4B Phantoms from USS Ranger, tasked with fighter cover, but the strike formation was unaware of them. The formations used different radio frequencies, and although Phantom crews were briefed of the strike formation's task, there was no way of telling if they were under attack. The Crusaders were led by Lieutenant Commander Spence Thomas, who had an inexperienced ensign as his wingman. Thomas and his wingman accelerated ahead of the Skyhawks to attack the anti-aircraft artillery near the bridge. They made one diving pass and then climbed back to 10,000 feet. But the rookie wingman lost sight of Lieutenant Commander Thomas due to poor visibility. The second pair of Crusaders followed with their diving attack. Hearing the Thomas's wingman call for help, they located him, and all three began to rejoin the leader. At that moment, Spence Thomas suddenly reported he was taking fire. MiG-17 succeeded in sneaking upon the Crusaders and successfully attacked. But even though the MiG leader, Pham Ngoc Lan, believed his victim was fatally damaged, in reality, Thomas was able to regain control. The gun camera film appeared to confirm a kill, but it only recorded while the trigger was pressed. The Vietnamese wingman Phan Van Tuc claimed to have also shot down a Crusader. American records, on the other hand, only indicate damage on Lieutenant Commander Thomas's F-8. Sources suggest different explanations. One is that Phan Van Tuc lost sight of Thomas after his leader's attack, then regained visual contact and believed this to be a different F-8. Another explanation is that he in fact attacked and shot down the A-4 flown by Lieutenant Commander Raymond Vauden, which American sources indicate as a ground fire loss. Lieutenant Commander Thomas was forced to divert to Da Nang, South Vietnam, as his hydraulics were damaged, and he couldn't raise the Crusader's wing for a carrier landing. The Phantom crews from Ranger were completely unaware of the MiG attack, and they only learned about it after landing. This confused and poorly coordinated operation was a good indicator of a confused and poorly coordinated air war. The first claims of Vietnamese MiG pilots can't be matched with American records, or in best possible case, they can only be matched partially. Things were different with their next two claims, but more on that in a future video. Thank you for your time and keep watching Showtime 112.